Well, for more on the Oscar Pistorius sentencing proceedings, we are now joined on the line by our reporter, Patricia Visagie. Very good afternoon to you, Patricia. Another emotional afternoon in court today. Do take us through some of the proceedings.
Well, good afternoon, Paul. Certainly, of course, you would know both the defense and state presented their closing arguments in the resentencing hearing of course, the Paralympian Oscar Pistorius. But the crux of the matter is the defense, who started first this morning presenting their closing arguments, asked the court to be objective and to make sure that they are not influenced by public perception and, of course, influenced by other powers outside a court when they consider a sentence for the Paralympian, saying that the court needs to consider the facts that were before them during the trial, and the facts remain the same, that Oscar Pistorius is a vulnerable man, a man who suffers from anxiety, and it is a man who feared for his life, and he was prompted by the fear that he felt on the morning of Valentine's Day 2013, and he thought there was an intruder in his house, and he acted out of that fear, trying to protect himself and, of course, his model girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp, that he never intended to kill Reeva. He actually wanted to protect her from what he thought was an intruder that was, of course, a threat to both his life and the life of Reeva Steenkamp. And that is essentially the crux of what the defense came to ask this court, that the court should show the Paralympian some mercy. The court should have leniency in considering a sentence for the Paralympian, that he is a vulnerable man. He is a man that has been shaken by the events of course, the murder of Reeva Steenkamp, saying that the court is not denying the facts that, of course, as it was put by the Supreme Court of Appeal, that Oscar Pistorius is guilty of murder and that he is guilty of dolus eventualis, but the factors around that, the circumstances that compelled him to pull the trigger 4 times and kill Reeva Steenkamp about 3 years ago, that should be the priority. That should be the focus that the court consider. But of course, thereafter, the state had to start presenting their closing arguments, and they hit back, saying that, of course, they believe that a reasonable man would have foreseen that whoever was behind that bathroom door, whether it was Reeva Steenkamp or whether it was an intruder, a reasonable man would have seen that firing 4 shots through that bathroom door would kill whoever was behind that bathroom door, asking the court to mitigate justice and administer justice in the right way, to make sure that the court considers the suffering, the pain of the victims, and that of course would be the Steenkamp family, saying that of course their pain, their suffering, their loss should of course be considered a priority in the matter of considering a resentence for the Paralympian. And of course we saw Advocate Gerrie Nel for the state emphasizing that Reeva Steenkamp has lost her biggest asset, and that is her life. She's never coming back, and that should be what the court should consider when they draft a new sentence for the Paralympian.
Patricia, still on the side of the defense. The defense we saw Oscar Pistorius earlier on having removed his prosthetics, and that was in a bid from the defense side to show his vulnerability. From where you were and from what you observed, did that move have the desired effect on the gallery?
Well, certainly a lot of people, were very curious. A lot of them, turned emotional when they saw the Paralympian. You would know that a lot of people have not seen him on his stumps. For a lot of people, it was a first time. So it did, have an emotional effect on a lot of people who were in court. Even the journalists, we saw some gasp from the public gallery as people were looking curiously on to the Paralympian being paraded through court. In the defense, of course, trying to reflect to the court that he is a vulnerable man. And at the morning when he pulled the trigger, he was on his stumps, and being on his stumps make him even more vulnerable than when he's on his prosthetics, and trying to show the court, trying to appeal to the conscience of the court that when this man pulled the trigger on the morning of Valentine's Day, he was a man that could barely run away from a so-called intruder if there was an intruder in the house. And we need to take into consideration that he was also suffering from anxiety, and that he almost became paranoid when he thought there was an intruder, and that compelled him to pull the trigger. So it was really a touching move from the defense side, but we need to take into consideration this was not the first time we saw the Paralympian on his stumps in court. In 2014, during the trial, the defense did exactly the same. They put him on his stumps, and they tried to, of course, demonstrate to the court, how he pulled the trigger on the morning of Valentine's Day, that on his stumps he does not have proper balance, and therefore he must have struggled trying to, of course, go against some of the testimonies of the witnesses who testified that he could not have, fired shot in great succession, as the defense had implied in 2014. So for many people of the media who are here, and some of the family members, especially the Steenkamp family, and of course his family as well, who are in court, it is not the first time that we saw him in court where the defense tried to demonstrate his vulnerability and the fact that when he's on his stumps, he does not have balance. He is not as fast as we are used to him as, Oscar Pistorius, the great athlete, the great hero that everybody admires. On his stumps, he's actually a very vulnerable and afraid individual.
Patricia, the final state witness was Reeva's cousin, Kim Martin, who appeared earlier today. Can you take us through what she said?
Well, of course, we expected Kim Martin's testimony to be very emotional, as the state had indicated yesterday, but it was not the case. But she gave a very touching testimony, nevertheless, trying to, tell the court of the trauma the Steenkamp family has suffered as a result of Reeva Steenkamp's death, telling the court that, they still struggling, they still grappling to come to terms with the loss. And also reminding the court that Oscar Pistorius has never really, in their view, told the truth. And all they wanted from the beginning was a truthful version as to what happened on the morning of Valentine's Day, what compelled him to pull the trigger. And of course, yesterday we heard, Reeva Steenkamp's father, Barry Steenkamp, telling the court that he really believes that the couple must have had an argument, and that might have led to that fatal shooting. And today, of course, that again came up, that, there must have been something that had gone wrong, and that's what they were hoping for as a family, for, Oscar Pistorius to not only reach out to them through the media or so, but to really go to the family directly, apologize, but also show remorse through telling them the truthful version. And that also became one of the pointers that the state focused on a lot in their closing arguments today, saying that the Paralympian, in their view, never told the court the truth, and therefore they believe that the remorse that he did show, if he did show any, was not significant. It was not enough, because they feel that remorse can only be truly enough if somebody tells the truth, comes clean, saying that he did not appeal to the conscience of this court, telling the court the truth, saying that when he was on the stand, when he testified in 2014, his version kept on changing, and that is the indication of somebody that was altering his version, and he never came to tell the truth about what really happened. And the state feels that that means it's somebody that's not taking responsibility for his actions, and he has not shown enough remorse. With, of course, advocate Gerrie Nel saying that another disturbing factor, and he repeated this in his, of course, closing arguments, is the fact that the Paralympian saw it fit to grant an interview to an international broadcaster, but he did not see it fit to come before this court now with the closing arguments in his resentencing, and of course just testify in mitigation of his own sentence, appeal to the conscience of the court, appeal to the conscience of the Steenkamp family, again, extend his apology, tell them that he is sorry, and maybe just tell the truth for once and all, and in that way be the man that can portray the picture of somebody that is truly sorry, taking responsibility and reflecting remorse, saying that somebody that grants an international media house an interview but refuses to take the stand in his own defense, in his own leniency appeal, is somebody that's clearly not showing significant remorse. So of course Advocate Gerrie Nel saying that he actually disrespected the court by not allowing himself to stand in his own plea for leniency, not allowing himself to testify, look at the defense, look at the Steenkamp family in the eye and say, here am I am a reformed man, I am showing remorse, I am sorry, and please give me a lighter sentence. Paul?
And that was our reporter Patricia Visagie taking us through the proceedings as we've just seen from the live visuals at the North Gauteng High Court today for the resentencing proceedings on the Oscar Pistorius case.